Tonight, the most powerful man in the United States Senate throws more fuel on the fire in the showdown between the feds, rancher Cliven Bundy, and his supporters. Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Meghan Kelly. The high-profile fight between a Nevada rancher and federal agents took a new twist earlier today as Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid's own son, Rory, a lawyer and a Democratic politician out in Nevada, condemned the heated nature of this dispute that saw Americans staring down armed federal agents last weekend. Listen here.
What strikes me about this is how heated it's become. It seems to me there has to be some way to de-escalate this.
Yes, there has to be. Apparently, however, his own father didn't get the message. Because at an event in Las Vegas this afternoon, Senator Reid, that man's father, blasted Cliven Bundy's supporters as domestic terrorists. Watch.
These people who hold themselves out to be patriots are not. They're nothing more than domestic terrorists. And I think that we are a country that people should follow the law. And what went up in Mesquite is not very good. I repeat, what went on up there is domestic terrorism. Okay, domestic terrorism.
My next guest was in the room when Senator Reid said that, and he just got off the phone with Cliven Bundy. Kevin Wall hosts KXNT's live and local afternoon radio show. Kevin, good to see you again. And so I just want the audience to know, Harry Reid was very quiet when the whole dispute was going on. Now it's over. Now that it's over, as his son is saying we should sort of de-escalate things, Harry Reid seems to be upping the rhetoric. What else did he say?
Well, he's throwing fuel on the fire, Meghan. One of the things he said is that Cliven Bundy has not paid his taxes. Now, this is the same charge that she levied against Mitt Romney during the presidential campaign. I talked to Cliven Bundy just less than an hour ago. He said he has no back taxes to pay. He is fully paid up when it comes to his taxes. He did say that in response to the charge of domestic terrorism, he says the real domestic terrorists, it's the BLM that came in with automatic weapons, 200+ strong. He says they're the terrorists, domestic terrorists, not him.
So the grazing fees that Cliven Bundy didn't pay, that's not the same thing as taxes. So Harry Reid seems to be leveling a new accusation against Mr. Bundy tonight that he doesn't pay his taxes?
Exactly. In the same sentence, he said he doesn't pay grazing fees and he doesn't pay his taxes. It's not a matter of he mistook one for the other. He used both in the same sentence. So he's accusing Cliven Bundy of not paying his taxes. Cliven Bundy says that's just not true.
What's the story? Why does anyone, with all due respect, why does anyone care what Harry Reid's son says about this? Because yesterday he called for Cliven Bundy to be prosecuted. Now today he calls for a de-escalation in the rhetoric. At the same time, his father is using the terms like domestic terrorists.
Well, I'm not sure why. I'm really not sure why people would care, but I will tell you this. Rory Reid does have his own TV show here in the market, and as such, he's on TV every day or at least 3-4 days a week. And the fact is, a lot of people believe that he or one of the other Reid brothers may be the heir apparent to Harry Reid if and when he decides to step down and leave the Senate.
So he's big in Nevada politics. Kevin, thank you.
Thank you, Meghan.
Joining me now, Dennis Michael Lynch. He's a documentary filmmaker who was on the ground at the ranch during the standoff with the federal agents. What do you make of it, domestic terrorists?
I don't know where he's coming from. In fact, since I've been with you on Monday, I've had more time to really sink in what took place. That man, I want an explanation from him. I want to know why it is that I had M16s pointed at my face, why those M16s were pointed at women and children and hard-working ranchers. I want an explanation, because the more I keep on looking at my footage, that looked like Afghanistan. And if there was anything that was domestic terrorism, it was perpetuated by the government, not by the people.
Okay, but Harry Reid sort of spoke to this today when he talked about women and children and how they were used, he says, by the supporters of Cliven Bundy, and what he accuses them of was supported to some extent by a sheriff who came on Fox News earlier this week. But here's Mr. Reid today.
They had sniper rifles on the freeway. They had assault weapons. They had automatic weapons. And as one of the former sheriffs from Arizona said, and we had children and women lined up because if anybody got hurt, we wanted to make sure they got hurt first, because we wanted the federal government hurting women and children.
I was at the front of the front line. I heard nobody say that we were going to put women and children first. Nobody said that. Nobody said, let's go forward with our guns out. Who's going to shoot that guy? Who's going to shoot that guy? If you listen to the video that I have, and that some of it I gave you, everybody said, let's be peaceful. At the same time as I had a sense that it was going to go in the wrong direction, not because of the people on my side, but because of the people on the other side. And if I can use your camera for 1 second, Senator, I am calling you out right now on national television. I've called your office today. I'm going to call your office every day until you grant me an interview. I'm going to sit down like a polite businessman, and I'm going to sit down and ask you one question. Why did you point guns at the American people? Was it to protect turtles, keep cows, or was it for some other reason? Because we don't work for you. You work for us.
Now, some people are suggesting that Harry Reid had some stake in this whole matter and that he was against the rancher, Cliven Bundy, for political purposes. He wanted the land for development or other people who pad his political pockets. None of which has been substantiated, but there's anecdotal evidence, circumstantial evidence of that out there. Nonetheless, Mr. Reid is the one who's calling more attention to this. It was over. People were moving on. He is the one who keeps stoking this fire.
Right, and the mainstream media will get behind him, and now everybody on the other side, so to say, Democrats, will sit there and say, crazy Tea Partiers, crazy militia, crazy Americans, domestic terrorists. Listen, you know how passionate I am about terrorism. I witnessed 9/11. I know what took place in this country in Boston. It is disrespectful to Americans for that man to call these people terrorists. They just want to get on with their lives. He is the terrorist, and as far as I'm concerned, in this situation.
It's not the first time either, because he called the Tea Party a bunch of anarchists.
You know why he's a terrorist? Because that man right there is trying to kill the American spirit.
Listen, you don't want to call Harry Reid a terrorist.
Yeah, listen,
now you're resorting to the same tactics.
I know, and I'm not saying that, but I apologize. But I'm not going to be afraid of Harry Reid. He's no greater than anybody else in this country. There has to be an explanation, Meghan, why he's got guns
pointed. But he does have a lot more power than the average American, certainly than the ones that he is calling names tonight. Dennis, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Senator Reid tonight also suggested that he is exploring possible charges against Mr. Bundy.
He has exhausted his ability to go to court, but now he continues to thumb his nose at authority. It's an issue that we cannot let go. Just walk away from it.
Andrew McCarthy is a former federal prosecutor and a contributing editor for the National Review. Andy, good to see you. And so if Harry Reid does push for some sort of charges against Mr. Bundy, what is likely to happen? Because Mr. Bundy has had the law not on his side in this dispute, and yet he seems to have been standing up on principle throughout this dispute.
Well, look, I don't think we can defend lawlessness. It seems clear to me, looking at the case, that he's in the wrong, at least as far as the statutes are concerned.
Legally.
The question is, the question's twofold. Number one, in terms of prosecutorial discretion, which the Obama administration likes to talk about a lot, there's a certain proportionality of response based on what the lawlessness is. What's most disturbing about what happened today is the way that we've trivialized terrorism. I mean, this country has actually been the victim of terrorism in very recent memory. We're talking about mass murder attacks. To compare the people in Nevada to terrorists is so beyond the pale to me. I just can't even wrap my brain around it.
You raise a good point. This is, so our viewers know, you actually used to put terrorists in jail for a living. That was your job.
Real terrorists.
You've dealt with real terrorists.
Right.
And this is the same administration that will not refer to the Fort Hood massacre as terrorism. They say that was workplace violence, and yet they can look at these Americans out there and call them terrorists with ease.
Yeah, look, we had Eric Holder, when he was at the Clinton Justice Department, facilitated the pardons of FALN terrorists and Weather Underground terrorists. President Obama has long-standing connections to Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dohrn, actual domestic terrorists who admit that they were terrorists. Bill Ayers says, you know, guilty as sin, free as a bird. They backed the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. They issued a visa to a member of the Blind Sheikhs terrorist organization in Egypt so that he could come to the White House and consult on the future of Egypt. So you know, maybe maybe there's rational explanations for all those things, but to now get whipped up about terrorism in the wake of what's going on in Nevada after this pattern of behavior with respect to people who are actually either mass murderers or people who plotted mass murder, I don't get it.
You know, we've been looking at this case all week, and I've said publicly as a lawyer, I don't think Cliven Bundy has a legal leg to stand on in this dispute. And yet you wrote an interesting post online agreeing with that principle and reaching that conclusion on your own, I should say, but also suggesting that it would be he's in a tough situation. I mean, the administration is in a tough situation here, in part because public opinion is that they, too, have been very cavalier about certain laws.
Right. Our respect for the rule of law depends on our acceptance of the proposition that the people who are in charge of executing the laws faithfully execute the laws, as the president is obligated to do in his oath of office and by the Constitution. If the public gets the sense that the administration itself is lawless, that those whose mission is to carry out the law are themselves in violation of the law, they lose the credibility and the legitimacy that they need in order to go in and, you know, handle situations like the situation that we had in Nevada. And I think that, you know, to listen to Harry Reid tonight, you know, talk about we have to have the rule of law, I've got two words for Harry Reid: Yucca Mountain. The Yucca Mountain facility is something that this nuclear storage facility that the Obama administration and Harry Reid have basically flouted federal law in trying to frustrate. The D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals has slapped them down a number of times because they won't comply with the law. And a government that stops complying with the law has an awful lot of trouble enforcing the law against citizens.
And claiming the moral high ground. Andy, great to see you.
Thanks, Meghan.